About the work that I do for Sideshow, and for those for those of you who don't know, Sideshow Collectibles is a company that makes a lot of figures, quarter scale and 6 scale, the 12-inch, 12 thing. I was hired to be a senior designer on the quarter scale things. So these figures here, on all of them, I create the bodies, I sculpt the bodies, and I make the clothes for them. Except for Punisher, somebody else did that body. And in all cases, there is another artists who will sculpt the portrait heads. There are other people much better at that than I am. But like I said, in all of these cases, I sculpt the bodies, I engineer the poses, and I make the clothes for all of them. And Tom Gilliland was a member of Scams, but we're going back quite a number of years. And Tom now is the, I would say he's like the man in charge of all the products of Sideshow. He decides what we're going to do there. And I knew him going back to '92, I first met him. And he asked me to do this with him at Sideshow around 2004, so I've been doing it since then. This Blackbeard is a good example of how I go about doing these figures. With each one of these, excuse me, it starts off with a prototype. And I come up with the body and the pose, and I come up with the prototype clothes and the attitude. This is a head, some nondescript head that came from some other figure. And I had fleshed it out with Sculpey, just roughed it out very much so. So to give the artist, who in this case was Trevor Grove, who did the real one, give an idea of what I'm having in mind here, what we're talking about. So then, and I'll do the mock-up accoutrements, and again, the guns, these Queen Anne were actually just, I took a Xerox from a book and just scaled it down. And then from that, other people then will take it and, for example, just the base is just pieces of wood. Somebody along the line, I don't know who it was in the Sideshow team, decided that, well, it would be cool to have it on a cannon barrel. So that's where that came in. And then there are other artists who actually sculpt the guns themselves. And there was another artist who actually sculpted the buttons and the buckle, whereas I just had a plain brass buckle that I got from my bits box. That was exchanged for a really nice looking buckle. And where I was simulating embroidery with just a Sharpie, all of this is actually embroidered here. So we can do that on computer, by computer embroidery. So this is an example how all Sideshow products are created. And it always takes a team. Then, after I do my bit, and then it goes to the people who are sculpting it, then it will go to yet another person for painting, which is where David comes in. He has also worked with Sideshow. And so when it's all complete and it's ready to go, then I have my patterns, and then these are the I draft these all out by hand. None of this is computer. This is all still done by hand. And then this shows the person who's actually going to be making them exactly what I have in mind. So there's no question, there's no doubt how this is going to turn out in the production run. Speaking of embroidery, This is one of our mock-ups for a Gandalf figure that we did, Lord of the Rings, Gandalf. And we had a number of pieces of research here. When I do research on any one of these figures, I'll watch the movie entirely. Watch the movie. Thank you. And then just freeze frame it and take all of the notes that I possibly can of all the details of what's going on with every single one of these costumes. So we were able to find the quilting pattern on one of Gandalf's garments. And again, by computerized embroidery, we are able to recreate that in quarter scale. And again, that's all done on computerized machines. Let's see. Starting with the Fallschirmjäger. This was one of 3 that we were going to make. We were also planning on an American and a British guy, right? And so once again, in creating, this was one of my early mock-ups of a jumpsuit. And all the research came out of a Brian Davis book about uniforms and equipment of the Luftwaffe. That's where I got all of this stuff from. This was my original mock-up that I had made. Again, I had did something just like the pirate, but for that Fallschirmjäger, and I made a mock-up canteen. And again, to show the real sculptor who was going to make this, what the dimensions of the cup were, how much bulk it should have, etc., etc. And the man who did the heads and hands, this is Andy Burkholz, who did this, right? And it comes with a separate head, with 2 heads, one with an overseas hat. And it's quite interesting. They have this, they've developed a way of having interchangeable heads. There. At one point, we were discussing doing a SS Panzer crewman. And to that end, we were developing a quarter-scale SS camouflage. And so this is computer printed, and they had some original stuff that they were able to scan down, and so this was actually destined for me to make a pair of pants out of, which we never did get around to, but I just hold on to it because it's quite an interesting little bit of miniature. Then the MG34 that they have on there, this is actually cast in metal. It has a nice bit of heft to it, and it's also a articulated thing. It was cast in metal, so when it's actually over his shoulder, that the weight of it will pull it down, and so the strap will look like it's really being pulled down like that. But these guys, again, I didn't do this. I should stress that in all of these cases, I do bodies and clothes. But there are other artists who sculpt these things. There are other artists that sculpt females, for example. I certainly I certainly don't do this here. Speaking of these armaments, the Lugers that they have here, and I believe that's a 45. Whoever does these are just magnificent. I just can't say enough. And not only that, but I believe this may be a Webley.
That might be the Indiana Jones.
The Indiana Jones thing. I mean, this for a quarter scale. They even have it so it breaks, and that the cylinder rotates here. I mean, they go that far. When we produce this stuff, these guys go that far. So I believe that's really what makes Sideshow stuff really superior to a lot of companies. But I'm biased. So. Yeah, and with John Wayne, Flying Tigers, again, it was my idea to have him look up and have him worried. As you know, in the movie, he's trying to scan who's coming back from raids. And again, we had, our research was just watching the movie, really, and then freeze framing everything that we could possibly get. As well as, oh, and Boba Fett, the Star Wars things. Again, I did the bodies, did the clothes. Somebody else did the armor. Yet another person did the base. But what we used for research was a lot of photographs, not from the movie, but this is stuff that actually comes from, that was provided to us by Lucasfilms. And so this shows all the details of what goes on underneath that armor. And not many people have ever had the opportunity to really see photographs like this. So, oh, there it is in the Arctic version. Yeah, so this is stuff that's in their collection, in their archives, and we were able to be fortunate enough to get all of these really nice close-up views. Again, it's not anything that most people ever have the opportunity to see, and again, and that's how we were able to create something that was spot on, I believe. I believe that was one of the most popular figures that we've done, because Boba Fett is a popular figure himself. And the Peter Cushing next to him, another Star Wars thing, which is something actually. Once we did that, that became an inspiration piece, and we also did a Christopher Lee from Star Wars. Those became inspirational pieces to do Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing from the Hammer movies. It's a Dracula and a Van Helsing, which is what I just recently got finished doing. That was my most recent project, and that was just a one-of, because those are not going to be put in production. We just made those two, especially for the director Guillermo del Toro, who did the Hellboy fans, among other things. So, yeah, so that's where those come in. Certainly the Indiana Jones. We again had a goodly amount of research that was given to us by the producers. Exact details of his coat, pants, where the pockets, and pleats, etc., etc.